I'll start the recording. So we are in the throes of this final unit on usability testing. Hopefully the peer review that you all did on Tuesday was helpful for getting that together. I still owe you feedback on that, so I will get to that hopefully today. But that is forthcoming. If you have not put the finishing touches on your prototype, you need to do that now, relatively soon, because we are moving into that testing, and that is what we'll need to essentially do the final. Not that there's a final exam in this class, but I mean the final project, like the final deliverable. You'll need testing information. So that is where we're at. We've gone through a whole semester of putting this all into practice. We've gone through a whole semester of building these prototypes, and now it is time to put the testing to work. This is kind of the last stage in our ideation process and our design process. I've had too much coffee because I'm like going nonstop, but whatever. That's me. That's this semester. So yeah. So the next step after you've got your test together is to actually launch the test this weekend, hopefully. I would like everybody to do the peer evaluation / peer testing. That is the one where I have assigned you a group to test, essentially. If you look at that spreadsheet on Google Drive, you'll notice that there are two columns. One is for giving feedback and one is for testing. We are now at that second stage, testing. And I've been kind of calling this a dry run at testing. So your classmates are going to form your first testing pool. And then ideally, you're going to go out and find a few more people who are willing to walk through your test for a second round of testing. Remember that I said your test shouldn't take more than 10 minutes, and with the kind of flow that I've asked you to build here, it probably won't even take that long. Most of your time will probably be spent asking questions. But yeah, the goal is, now that we are putting the finishing touches on the tests themselves, that you go out and you use them in the wild, first on your classmates and then on real people. So I'm going to say that, and I'm going to pause for a second and let you ask questions, or if there's something I need to clarify there. Yep, go ahead, Ivana.
So I was wondering, like, how functional is our design supposed to be? If that makes sense. Like, how are we supposed to be testing it if it's not fully functional?
So if you watch the balsamic video that I posted, like here's how you make a prototype in balsamic or a wire flow in balsamic. It was kind of like it did one thing, right? There's a couple of links to it. There were a couple of things that I clicked to go from page to page, but it was really only testing one thing. And so that's really all you need.
Okay. Okay. You know, I'm gonna dwell on that a little. Let me.
I mean, go on as well. It should be relatively polished, right? I know we're not going for, like, this is not a design class exactly. We're not going for polished. You're not UI engineers, and this, like, nothing we're doing this semester is really about UI, user interface, right? Design, in case I'm just throwing this around willy-nilly. So it doesn't have to look absurdly polished, right? But what we want is to see that your tester could walk through the steps to do something. So in the example I posted, it was sign up and create a new ticket or something like that, right? And so I just had to make sure that the buttons were functional for that.
Okay, I see.
Right.
Because the thing is with if I may be a little bit more like precise with our group, Tinder,
Mhm.
we implemented this new feature of live chat.
Yep.
So um I'm here thinking like even with Amazon, with any other company, they have this automated system where, oh, like, how can we help you today? And then give you these options to select
Mhm.
from. And then if those options don't satisfy you, they'll connect you to an agent.
Right.
So are we, so for us, for our group, are we supposed to go to that extent where you can connect with an agent? Like it's to test it to see
So I
if
would say no, but I'm going to ask what the task you identified um, in your user test was. So what are you going to ask them to do? What's the goal?
I'm trying to recall, like we wrote down a lot of goals. Um, Fiola, Becky, can you guys recall one of our goals?
Um, I'm trying to remember. I think one of them was, or no, I don't want to say the wrong
I
thing.
mean,
Hold on, let me check.
yeah, sorry. Sorry.
That's okay. I'm just kind of gonna muse on this because I think if you're designing the experience of getting help in the app, then the best thing you could do is probably ask a user to try to get help in the app, give them a specific problem that they're trying to solve. So let's say something isn't functioning in the app. So you would give them the mock-up, you would say, and you would start them on the starting screen. You would say, this is the problem you're having. What would you do to solve this problem? How would you go and get help in the app? And then you would watch them, what they do, what they click on or tap on first. And then, not all of the things that they could tap on have to be functional. It's entirely possible that the only thing that's functional is the link that you want them to follow. Right.
Okay. I see what you mean.
Right.
Um,
Um, yeah. Yeah. Because you're also gathering data by seeing what they tap on first. If they go straight to the thing that you want them to, that's great. Like that is great news for you as a designer. But if they don't, you still get that information just by seeing where they go first. And you can make corrections based on that.
okay. Okay. I see what you mean.
And like I said, I will have more feedback once I actually get that I'll actually put on the tests because I am a little bit behind on that one, admittedly. But I think the general advice that I would give to everybody, not just you guys, would be to have a very specific task in mind and design around that. Right. So I know YouTube, I think, sent me something that was like a list of things, and one of them was a search. Um, and like that's great. It's great that you want to test searching, but at the end of the day, how testable is that within the confines of this class, right? And you really don't want something that large for the level of testing we're doing. I think the mock-up that I made when I made that video was something like 10 screens tops, so not that many at all. If you've and that was I cheated. I used screenshots, um, and even that is probably too many. I think most people have somewhere between 3 and 5. Some people have maybe 3 and 5. Some people have more. But I think that's a good number of screens to have. And all you have to do is make sure that your screens connect so that your user can click on things, get from page to page. And again, I will offer balsamic to anyone who wants it still, because like that is a really easy tool to use to do this kind of thing. Did you find the task, Becky?
Not yet.
Okay, that's okay.
I have
Um,
oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I have our the goals of our research or the tasks. Wow. I'm looking at the task right now and it's like we wrote a whole paragraph, like a step-by-step instruction. Let me see. Yeah, I don't think we were as specific as you mentioned or you wanted us to be. We were just saying the task or the instructions to our tester was if you have if you are experiencing an error or a glitch in the app, please click on like the live chat support and we will connect you to an agent. That was kind of like what the task was, but we weren't like very specific about what problem they would run into.
I found like some of the goals of our research that we said, but it's pretty general, just like to gather user experience feedback for improvements and obtain feedback from users for negative findings and
Or
yeah,
determine
determine whether users find the live chat support useful.
Okay.
Sorry.
No.
Yeah, and that would be my advice then, is to narrow it down into it's like testing a hypothesis. The more specific your hypothesis can get, the better. It's like the thesis statement in an essay or the argument in an essay. The more specific it gets, the better. So you want to zoom in on one task or activity, right? I say task, but we can spread that out a little bit more. And at this point, I'm kicking myself for not using that mock-up I made to have you all do a user test from the tester side, because I think that might be a good experience. But I don't want to throw something else onto your plate this late in the game. If you're interested, shoot me an email and I'll set you up with something so you can see what it looks like. So when you set up a user test, that is my advice. Create a task that is as specific as you can. And then if you do that, make sure that your scenes support that task, right? So Ivana mentioned the Amazon chatbot. So if I go to help on Amazon, I'm going to first get the chatbot and then go through those steps. And then if I need to, I'm going to go get a live agent. So if I was setting up a user test for that, I would first, my task would be, you have this problem and it is not one of the options given to you by the automated system. What do you do? And I probably wouldn't tell them that it's not one of the tasks covered by the automated system. I'd just say, you have this problem, try to get help. So I'd set up a home screen. And I know I'm talking without visual aids, I'm sorry. So I'd set up the home screen for Amazon, right? And I would put help where I want it to be. And I would see, this is where I'd leave them. I'd start them on this page and I would see what they click on first to try to get help. Where they scroll to on the page, do they go up, down? Do they click on menus? What do they do? What's their behavior? And then eventually they'll find it, right? Whether they go straight there or they meander a bit because they're lost. And that will tell me something about my design. If they meander, it will tell me that I need to improve my design so that I have clearer, I'm blanking on the name, not affordances, the things that point to affordances. I don't know, I can't remember. I'm just blanking right now. But it's clearer, steering. Whereas if they go straight there, If they get to what I want first without anything in between, then I know that I've designed this well. The structure of my page is good, etc., etc. And when they click on help, maybe my instructions to them said that I want them to test the chat feature. So they're going to find the chat in that list. And again, what they click on first, where they go on the page, that is going to tell me something about how they access the page and what I need to do to make the desired element more appealing or to stand out more. Right. So they click on chat, and so far I've got two screens. I've got the home screen and I've got the help page screen. So now I have to create another screen that involves the chat. It can be on the page. I can have it pop up, in which case I would use the help page as a background and just kind of insert a chat box in one of the corners, usually the lower right-hand corner is where chat goes. Or I could create another window that pops up on top of it, because I think that's actually what Amazon does. From there, I might create a mock-up screen of the chatbot's lines. How can I help you today? And then a selection of issues. And I want to make sure that there's an option for none of these and that they click on the option for none of these. And then that just might be it. That might be where I say, I can either offer more automated options. So I give them 4 options and none of these. If they click on none of these, I can take them to another screen that has 4 more options. Or I can just take them directly to a customer service agent, and I would create a mock-up screen for that. And that might be where that test ends, because my task for them was to just go and get help, not to actually solve the problem, but to get help, right? So there's a difference there. Solving the problem is not something we can test for. Like I can't test, if I'm designing the web page, I can't test Amazon's return system or the way their customer service works from the web page. That is hands-on, that is in another department, that is not what we're interested here. But I can test how people get to that page and access that help. And that is what we're interested in here. Does that make sense? Give me something, y'all. Thank you. And so, with that example, I've created a home screen, help page, the chat box as it pops up, maybe a chat box with another couple of options, and the screen where they chat with an agent. So I'm only creating 5 scenes. That's all, right? We're not trying to mock up the whole app or website. We're just trying to create the screens that they will need to carry out the task we're asking them to do. So for Tinder, that might just be, you might actually use the same flow that I just mentioned with Amazon, right? It might just be those 5 screens, and your task would be go get help with this problem, and you just make sure that the specific problem you give them is not one that's covered by the automated system. This is not the lesson I intended to give today, but hopefully it's helpful. Because either it's the coffee deceiving me, or I actually feel like that was a good example. I don't know. Okay. All that off of one question. Yeah. So what else is going through your minds?
I feel like you've kind of answered this. I'm just thinking for my group, GoPuff, like we kind of split it up, and I'm specifically been working on the like checkout and tracking your order page. Would you want to see like a screen off of that if you were to say like try and contact a driver maybe? Or okay.
Yeah, that would be an option.
Okay.
And I would also say, like, make sure that you put all these together at the end of the day, because we do want to test the whole flow overall,
Yeah. Mhm.
not individually.
Thank you.
Yep. What else? Okay, well, I'm going to jump in here and give the talk that I wanted to give today. That sounded snarky. It was not. Sorry. It was not meant to be snarky. But I wanted to talk a little bit about these usability reports that you're going to be doing based on the research that you're doing. So we're doing the user testing now. We're in the throes of that. Well, the product of that testing is this usability report. Because once you're done with iterative design 3, you're done with design. I'm not going to ask you to go back and correct your design. After you do the testing, we're going to stop after that testing and be done with it. But the product, the result of that, there's really two. I'll talk about the last one next week, but it's really just a compilation of everything you've done this semester. So not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'll give you the template for it. And that is what you will have for your portfolio. So usability reports. Usability reports are where we give the results of the usability test and we make recommendations as to the next stage of design. Usually you do this even if you're involving all of the members of your team in the design process. It's just good to have this all in one place. So there's a couple of things that we need to do with this. First of all, I want to talk about something called a system usability score. This is not something you've seen before. I just kind of copy and paste this definition, but essentially the system usability score, or SUS, and yes, I will keep calling it SUS, if only to make myself laugh quietly to myself. So the SUS is a quick, reliable way of assessing design solutions, of assessing your system, and it's a fairly commonly used way to evaluate prototypes for usability. So I'm going to walk you through what it looks like, how we do it, and it will be one element of your usability report. Okay, so far you have added questions to your test based on what you want to know about the system that you've designed. The SUS is actually a series of 10 questions that are added usually after as a debrief session. So this is something that you can add on to your user test before you launch it. These are the 10. These are the 10 questions. Right, where project name is just replaced with the name of your project. And it gives you a feel for someone's emotions, someone's feelings, someone's stance on your project after you've tested them. Notice that some of these are positive, like 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. If you're noticing a pattern emerging, there's a reason for that. Notice that some of them are negative. Hey, it's the even numbers. Woo. There's a reason it's segmented like that. I'll talk about it in a minute. Each of these questions is paired with a Likert scale. Maybe you've seen this before, maybe you haven't, but it's this 5-point scale ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree, and it offers some nuance for people to respond. Once they respond, we assign some point values to each response. They're listed there. Not surprisingly, 1 to 5. Pause for effect. and then we calculate it. So this goes to analyzing data, the final stage of actual testing before we put it all into the usability report. Technically, I'm kind of combining things here, but yeah. So we add up all of the odd numbered questions. Those are the positives. We subtract 5 from the total and we get our first number, X. We add up the total score for the even numbered questions. Those are our negative questions. And then we subtract that from 25 to get a Y. And then we add them up and multiply it by 2.5. That will ultimately give you a score out of 100. Hopefully you have a fairly high score. I think the average score on usability testings on this scale is around 68, something like that. So if you're in that ballpark, 10 above, 10 less, you're doing pretty good. If you're way above that, great. If you're way under that, not so great. But it gives you a real sense of, or a qualitative sense of how people feel about your app. It changes abstract feelings into numbers that we can use to represent things. If I go a little quickly through these, this slideshow is linked on Blackboard. Again, go to content slideshows and it'll be in that folder. So you have it. Okay, so once you're done analyzing your data, both that quantitative data that I was just talking, qualitative data that I was just talking about, as well as the feedback you get directly from people, that is qualitative data, you're going to put it all together into a usability report. For our purposes, that is going to look like a slideshow. Okay? Because I am going to ask you to do a presentation as part of this. I know. But you could just do what I did the other day, hop on Zoom, present it, and all of you can talk on the same call and record it and send it to me. So if you don't know how to do that, I think I put that link on the peer evaluation instructions, but I will also make sure that it's available elsewhere. Let me make a note of that. Okay. So when you set out to do the usability report, once you're done testing and you get all your information and you analyze your data, once you've got it all set up so you know what you're dealing with, the first thing you write as in your report is an introduction, and that is where you offer the basic background summary of your project, right? So the app you redesigned, why you redesigned it, what you were trying to redesign. You would also put the goals of the testing into this report, right? So maybe you have 2 slides on this. Background summary first, then goals. I think the goals that Becky and Ivana were giving us were good examples. So I'm going to post this recording so you can go back and listen to those. But it is a good idea to be specific about your goals and not just put, we were testing to improve our system. Well, yes, we know that, but what specifically were you looking for? Right, what were you testing? What did you measure? Is it where they went on the page? Is it how they got there? Is it the level of frustration? What? Right, and if it was all of those things, those are separate goals. So write a different goal statement for each. You want to present your methods. That includes how you got the people to test this project for you. So your recruitment methods. That includes information about your testers. So make sure you note things like age, gender, maybe, affinities, right? The same kind of demographics and psychometrics that you used for your audience, your representative users way back when, you're going to do that here as well. So refer back to that, look at your slideshows, look at the lectures, look at your notes. That's going to come up again here. You need to get that level of information about all of your testers. And then finally, you're going to put the methods that you use to actually test. What did you have them do? Was it a moderated or unmoderated test? Was it, well, everybody's distance these days. What questions did you ask? What did you look for? Did you use QuickTime? Did you have them do screen recordings? Did you do it on Zoom? Was it synchronous or asynchronous? Give us as much detail as you can about the testing. And then you list your results. So results go by themselves. You want to label the good, you want to include the good, the bad, the weird, anything and everything that you think is valuable. Because I'm asking you to do this as a presentation, however, you want to make sure that that information includes only the highlights. You don't want to go into a lot of detail in the weeds about things people said about how they were feeling that day. You want to find the most important information. And this is where analyzing your data comes into play, because you have to go through the data that you collected and find what tells a story, what is important, what fulfills your goals in testing, what information addresses the goals you had in testing. Results. From there, you list the bugs, issues, whatever you had. What were the frustrations? What were the pain points that your users had? What came up if somebody really wanted to click something and you didn't allow it? What do you do about that? Well, actually not what do you do about that, but that needs to be noted. Because that list of bugs and issues is going to turn into the next session, is going to feed into it, which is recommendations and actions. So now that we know these bugs and issues are present, now that we know these pain points are here, what are we going to do about it? Okay, so just like way back at the beginning, when you did that heuristic evaluation, we're making recommendations again. Okay, we have come full circle. And then at the end, disclaimer. So was there anything that got in the way of your testing? Was there anything that your stakeholders need to know about obstacles in your way, things that went wrong, things that could be improved in the next round of testing, about the test itself, not about the project, because that comes in the previous section. But is there anything in the test that needs to be improved? Does your sample size need to be larger? Do you need to get more testers? That kind of thing would go in disclaimers. Questions so far on this one? So I included a couple of links in this slideshow. I'll show you one in a minute. This Adobe XD article I thought was great. Just goes over a lot of this in more detail than I had time to cover here. And there's also a section on that page about, I think it's on that page, about the SUS that you can look at for more info. Again, commonly used. You can probably find more on Google. But I wanted to take a look at this Extensio one. Extensio is a nice template. Okay. So this is kind of what you're going for as far as usability test results are concerned. Obviously, you're not going to use a template. You're going to make a slideshow so you can walk through it. But this does kind of break things down. So we have the usability testing. We have a background here. We have the people who worked on it. We have the company it was for, and you can just use writing 417 as that. And then we give it a title. Obviously, you don't need to be more creative than that. There's a table of contents here. I would say include it just because. There's an executive summary. So the executive summary, hopefully you've read them before. I teach them in 307. I don't know if everybody does or not. but whatever. The executive summary is where you list out all of the information that will come in the report, essentially for people who will be too busy to read the whole report or who have to make decisions, namely executives. I hate it. I hate that we have to make this concession, but it is pretty commonly accepted in industry. So you need to be able to write this. I'm not going to I'm not going to judge you on your ability to write an executive summary, but you do need to make an attempt at it. So all of the crucial data is summarized here, right? And they even, like, I really like this because they even go into detail about here's what you need to do. So you can absolutely follow this template, but don't use this template, if that makes sense. Okay. After the executive summary, as I said, we have goals. So what were the goals in your user testing? Why are they important? We have a methodology section. Notice that they are bullet points. We're not going into an absurd amount of detail about how we recruited people, how we screened them, etc. We're just giving our viewers the highlights. Participant profiles, both listed out and in a more visual format. If this looks familiar to you, it should. This is the same kind of thing you did with your audience. Sorry, I keep calling it the wrong thing. This is the same kind of thing you did with your representative user profiles, right? So those old things are coming back to haunt us now. We go into a lot of detail, actually, more detail about testing setup and questions than anything else in this presentation. Because this is kind of the meat and potatoes. This is what this is focused on, this section and the next two. Results, notice that they include some visual representations, highlight the visual representations here, highlight the percentages, and offer a brief overview of the results, as well as the specific categories. And they list the good and the bad. So what was good, what was bad, because that is going to feed into, I'm going to skip this because that was overall, and then we go through categories. What was good and what was bad, that leads to bugs and issues. So if you are analyzing by category, which I'm not requiring you to do, you would go into detail, you would split them up into categories. But in general, you are listing out the problems that people have that you need to address. And then what are you going to do about them? So now that we have all of those bugs and issues, what are we doing about them? And each point here should correspond to a point here. So for every bug or issue or frustration that you list, you need to make a recommendation or a future action. Okay. And there's a disclaimer with sample size obviously being the first one, because that always happens. And an appendix, which I did not mention before, but can be included if there is anything extra you feel your audience needs as extra information. Okay. And that's about it. That is a usability report in a nutshell. So I'm going to stop sharing because my computer is heavy breathing, and ask what questions you have about any of that. Okay. I'm going to pause the recording.